The end of the world is not at hand. The world's already ending. For us, for our existence, what we exist here, what we've been here, the amount of time that humans have been here, it's not a speck when you look at the totality of existence for this world. No, we're nothing but an age, an era. The earth will live on far past us. But we have limited time, probably. More time than you and I will ever have to spend, though. There's no power. There's flooding. There's excessive windstorms last night. As I drove down the road, there's trees everywhere. Trees in the road, trees being cut out. There's no estimate on when we'll get power back. The highest unemployment rate possibly ever. I'd have to check it against the Great Depression, but basically no one's working unless they're essential. There's an illness with no cure spreading. Actually, an illness with no treatment. No vaccine. Nothing really preventative you can do outside of self-isolate. People are locked in their homes. I haven't checked the suicide rate, but I would have to assume that it's fairly high. Just due to the fact that a lot of the things people use to cope with their suicides probably limited or taken from them. The same would have to be true for alcoholism and drug use. I would have to assume that right now is a great time for relapse. Most of the churches are preaching the end time, but when are they not preaching the end time? That's not the plot of a sci-fi channel movie or some major summer sci-fi blockbuster. No, that's the current state of the world. If you look at it from a certain perspective, that's where it is. This isolation does, though, afford us the ability to think, to examine not only ourselves, but our situations and life in general. I've always wanted to be rich. I think everybody does to some degree, and just be able to stay home, hang out with my family, go do what I want to do, all those things. Make those big trips and go to all these extravagant places and travel the world. I'm halfway there. I mean, if we look at this positively, I'm halfway there. No, I'm not rich. It's illegal to travel, so I'm not going to be traveling the world. But I'm home with my family. I don't have to report to work currently. I'm free. Free from an existence that kind of enslaved me. Enslaves us all. The grind of working, paying bills, making it through life. We've all had to do those things. And I've yet to find, I can't say that, I have found people that enjoy it. Worker bees, army ants, they have but one goal in life: exist, survive. That becomes a lot of times what almost all of us do. But I don't think it's what all of us desire. I know it's not, it can't be. But some of us kind of just relegate ourselves to that and go, this is what we have, this is what we can do. What more is there to life than this? I'm no philosopher by any stretch of the imagination, but there's things that I can't help but ponder and constantly go over and look at. The question of why we're here, to what purpose do we serve? That's a huge question for most people. I think that's why religion is so popular. Because it's the closest thing to an answer you'll get for that. Because science can't really give us an answer to that. Science can give us almost everything. Science and mathematics are how we survived as long as we have and how we will grow into the future. But they can't answer that question of what's the purpose. See, the purpose can't be to work, create debt, try to pay for debt, create more debt, struggle, work, die. Can't be. Now, if our existence here is just to procreate and spread the species, then the evolutionary traits we have that allow us the ability to form such complex societies and create such amazing technology would not need to be there. I mean, other species don't have that in them, yet they're able to continue and evolve and spread and procreate. And a man is good at stopping that process. And see, that's the weird thing. We have this power, this ability in regards to our environment to manipulate it and to affect it on a degree that any other animal can't. See, that's how we determine what intelligent life is. I think that that's actually the opposite of intelligent life. See, we look at intelligent life with life that has the ability to impact or affect or change its environment. They say dolphins are not quite as sophisticated as us. They cannot manipulate their environment. I would say that maybe that's the stepping stool for intelligent life. Maybe that's a part of intelligent life, but it's most definitely not a prerequisite for intelligent life, because if anything, our willingness to destroy our surroundings, our willingness to impact our habitat, to change the world around us regardless of consequence, is a sign of a lack of intelligence. So we can't say that that's what makes us intelligent. What makes us special, seems to be our emotions, our love, and to whatever scientific degree love is real, to whatever scientific explanation of love there is. If it's all mental, if it's somewhat physical, if it's a mix of the biological and the intellectual, regardless of what it is different. It's not, I can't say that other animals don't love. The emotion and the way it's displayed and its impact on their groups or herds or their family units or their species in general is not the same as it is with humans. Now, many humans, some people would say more than average, have a ability to not show love, to not show compassion. And that's true. It's very true. But possibly it's a sign of poor programming. Possibly it's a sign of an evolutionary step that's gone. I look at the situation we're at right now. I was born in 1982. My generation most definitely embraced the internet revolution. The generation after me embraced it even more so. It's the only existence they truly know. But my generation did embrace it. But I, like so many others, have this problem. I'm extremely nostalgic about the point in time I was born up until I was probably 18. So the mid to late 80s through the 90s. I've heard people from the 50s talk in the same manner in which we do, but it seems like we have a lot more nostalgia and, love for our childhood in that time period than most other people. So like I said, outside of people from the 50s. Now, there's two options here. There's the fun option that I like, that we actually exist in the Matrix, and the 50s was one reset of the Matrix, and the 80s was another. But then there's the more logical that maybe people from the 50s were the generation at the edge, at the precipice of change. See, they saw the drug culture of the 60s and the revolutions. Now, understand, African American people in the United States, most definitely, the 50s are not going to be their favorite time. Because you have to understand what they had to endure. You know, even up into the 60s, they were still having to fight on a regular basis for their freedoms and their rights. But there's a large segment of white population that feels that way about the 50s, and they came into change. And we, being children of the 80s, we came into that same change. See, children of the 60s and 70s, I guess, were part of that change. Children of the 90s and 2000s were part of that change. And maybe that's what drives our nostalgia. We long for the life that we had because we've seen such great change and growth in that life. And it doesn't make sense why it doesn't happen to others. I don't know. That's not a scientific answer. That's not a theoretical response. That's not professionally observed psychological analysis. That's my thought. That's my hypothesis on what's happened and why we are that way. See, I feel disconnected. I long for that connection. I long for human interaction. I long for actual conversation. I long to hang out together in actual places, to actually be together, to be part of a social unit with people. I miss having to view things on television at a certain time on a certain day without the ease of access. And that's weird. I love movies. I love being able to go grab a movie anytime I want a movie. But I miss the process of going to the video store. We miss these things for the obvious reason of that was part of our childhood. It's comfort. It's memories that we share and that are valuable to us in respects that they are memories, that they are a piece of us at a particular time and place. But I also think that they hold value to certain people because they're programmed for that. I wrote in a poem once that I'm not going to sit and read the whole thing. Let me see if I can find the paraphrase I was looking for. I'm sorry. Had to pull over to do that. Don't have time to really look. And I did write it and don't have the ability to recall it. But basically, it's hard to be excited and motivated about change in the future when you don't like the look of the future. And it's not fun being that transition from old to new, because people of the 50s, 60s, even to a large degree the 70s are a part of that older way. They don't feel the change, much as people from the 30s and 20s did not feel the change that the people from the 50s undoubtedly felt for whatever reason. But they don't feel the change the way that we feel the change, and so we're transitional. We're that transitional generation in psychological evolution and the evolution of how we interact with one another and changes in life in general. So I think that makes us more nostalgic. I think it also impacts some of us in a way that we truly desire to be on that cutting edge, to be on that, because a lot of people, who were adults in the 80s were really on that cutting edge and that leading end of innovation, because I think to a certain degree they felt as though that was a way to maintain youth, and they came out of cultures like the 60s and 70s that didn't have the transitional issues that we had coming from the 80s. I look at our change to social interaction seems to be the hardest one for me. I can't process or handle social media the way that I should be able to. Now, I think I have a lot of people my age that would argue and say that they very much do have that ability, and some of which I'm sure do, but most of which I observe don't. They still have the ability to or the initial response to often take it personally, to make it as real as it can possibly be, even more real than it in fairness actually is. They struggle for the separation of reality and simulation, the separation of the real world and the Facebook world, the Twitter world, the Instagram world. That seems probably crazy to a younger generation, even so to an older generation. And I would almost be willing to bet that my generation would deny that completely. And in fairness, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. I also happen to not be a specialist scientist or a professional of any merit whatsoever. I'm a guy with a microphone who likes to talk and think things out and discuss ideas. Having said that, I believe that the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in how those people react. I think the way that politicians are able to get supporters via internet, and the way that parties and media are able to push out ideals, it seems to be this large segment of people that are in whatever generation that is. That doesn't necessarily mean people born in the 80s. It could be people in the late 70s coming into the 80s, all the way up to some people in the late 80s into 90s. It seems to be that swath of people. You know, the way that we judge, determine, and rank people into generations is not necessarily an accurate way to do it. I think there's times and events and things that can separate a group of people, like, for example, on a very large scale. And this is a ridiculous way to do it, but on a very large scale, if you wanted to do that now, you could look at people who were old enough to truly remember and process 9/11, and then there's everyone else who was either not born or is not old enough to, when it happened, to really understand it, see it, and process it. So, you know, you could have one generation there, and I don't know what the time frame is on that generation from date to date, but you could have members of that generation who were too young and or not yet born to understand the impact or feel the emotion around that event. But then you'll have people afterwards who did, and it would be hard to lump them into the same generation. Same could be said for something like civil rights movement, an assassination of a leader, the assassination of Malcolm X, the assassination of Martin Luther King, the assassination of the Kennedys. Excuse me. Events such as that will impact a generation and may divide what we generally constitute as being a generation into two different ones. With our generation, I believe it is somewhat divided, with those who were more familiar with life before electronics and to those who weren't, because I don't know where exactly we fall. I don't look at that type of things, because it's, like I said, it's a weird formula for how they divide that to me. It's sometimes it seems fitting, sometimes it doesn't. But again, I have no professional training in such fields, so it is merely an opinion. Now, if we look at our current situation, the way let me back that up. If we look at our situation before, say, the coronavirus hit, our ability to interact limited mostly to technological interaction and things of that nature, we see the difference in generations. And again, my generation is much more embracing of this technology. I don't want it to seem like they're not. It's myself, I see issues with it. I'm riddled with issue in interacting with it and dealing with it. And that could be my own neurosis. I don't know. But I most definitely am. And I see it in the way other people around me of my generation react with it. Whether they see it or not, or whether I'm simply misinterpreting the information, I see a struggle with the ability to cope there. Now, with younger generations, I don't see this struggle at all. I even, to some degree, because I have some very young family members, I even to some degree see them gaining the ability to somewhat put a separation to it, to somewhat maybe limit certain intakes. Sometimes to an extreme that's not good, sometimes to an extreme or to a level that seems to me to be appropriate. I kind of look at it like this. This could possibly be the issue. A lot of times when white Europeans would come to places, they would only have two things to offer, religion and alcohol. Most cultures were set on religion. It seems to be just a requirement of humanity that in some way we form a belief structure to explain the things that we cannot ourselves explain, and science has not yet advanced to a point that they can explain to us. The other being alcohol, something that if these native peoples have not been in contact with, native peoples who are suddenly introduced to alcohol without the process of it coming in slow doses and lower strengths, lower proofs, and having to learn the fermentation process themselves and having to do all these processes. When it's just introduced as a standalone item that here it is, full potency, no work required to create it, this is it, then alcoholism seems to run rampant in those native peoples. Technology is very similar to that, in my opinion, to people of certain generations. It's, here it is, you don't know how to process it, you've not seen it, you've not been through the growing pains, here it is. Partake and enjoy. And it's done to excess. It's done to a point that is damaging and hurtful to the individual, whereas when we get generations who are raised in it, brought up in it, it appears that maybe they are going to be able to handle their liquor a little better than us, as it were. And again, that's just from the outside looking in. It's from I'm an uneducated person in regards to the classical sense of being educated, so that's my look at it from that point of view. And I feel that's, for me, seems to be a pretty fitting, pretty fair point of view from it. Now, the situation we are currently in, where people are locked in homes and under quarantine, and for the most part up to this point, there has been internet that I understand. I mean, we've had a couple of problems here and there. Let's look at the U.S. because I can't speak of the rest. Let's look at Kentucky. I can only speak about what I can fairly see with my own two eyes, feel with my own hands, and hear from my own media, which I take in limited doses. But in that regard, we seem to be at a standstill to a certain degree. Certain people, obviously we have to look at personalities, introverts, extroverts. And again, this is why somebody with more intelligence and education than myself would need to do this. You would have to filter out the introverts and extroverts as far as them being part of the data set for this. But I look at people like myself who, for whatever reason, I feel programmed to be out, to be social, to see people, to do things. I like to see somebody, look them face to face, talk to them. I like to shake a hand. I enjoy conversation. I like to laugh with someone else face to face. That's the greatest feeling in the world to me. I enjoy conversation and interaction. Whereas I have family members who do not. They very much prefer the artificial. Now, there's people that they want to interact with, significant others, girlfriends, boyfriends, friends here and there. But for the most part, their electronic interaction is very, very fulfilling for them and very, very satisfying for them. I think to a certain age, thank God I was worried it was gone. There is this still spark of rebellion of you can't tell me. There's also this large quantity of stupid. I obtained massive amounts of it. It sweated from me when I was younger. Stupidity is the cornerstone of youth often. And so, you can't be held accountable for that. That is part of the process of maturing, in my opinion. But they do seem to handle the interaction set a lot better than, say, someone like me. I'm not particularly enjoying it, or to some degree, at certain times. Now, having said that, a lot of it is how you look at the situation, process it. I look at it as, okay, now that I've had time to sit down, think about it, reevaluate it, here I am with this chance to do what I always wanted to do, to be able to experience my family and be around my family and love my family and interact with my family and not be restricted by all the trappings of human existence. And so I'm there. So I'm learning to appreciate that. And I'm appreciating the electronic interaction. I'm appreciating the Facebook. I'm appreciating getting to see what my friends are doing, getting to interact with and talk with my friends. My really close friends I'm talking to on a pretty regular basis. There's two guys I'm in a group text with, or a group message with, that I get to talk to all the time, and I can check on them and know that they're okay, and that's a good feeling. I've known both of those guys since grade school, and we were a long time out of contact and not being able to interact with each other, and still wouldn't be able to at this point in time if not for that electronic connection. So I'm very thankful for that. I've learned to process that in a different way. I'm thankful for the ability to do so. Now, I'm in a group chat with two other gentlemen I played in a band with in high school that I've never really been out of contact with those two guys, and I don't know that I ever want to be. Even if it's a dumb meme or just something about an album that's come out, or something about music, or one of them's an over-the-road truck, or just something about where he's at, I truly enjoy the ability to interact with those two people. That is a great part of my day, and I appreciate that possibly more now that I've taken the time to kind of look at the circumstances and realize, well, okay, before I couldn't see them because one lived away from here and one was an over-the-road trucker. Now I can't see them due to this quarantine. That makes the quarantine seem worse. Well, no, I still actually can't see them because of the same situation I couldn't see them before. I just tried to paint it with a different light. And then I blame often, I'll go, well, we would get to see each other more if people weren't so dependent on the internet and social media to interact with people. No. The one friend would still be driving cross country, and the other friend would still live in a different area. And none of us are talk on the phone type of people, so we're not going to call each other and have long conversations on the phone. Well, I am that type of person, but they're not. But, so in regards to that, we're not going to have that interaction without this. So when thinking about things in that manner, it does allow for me to process them differently and appreciate them in a different way. Now, I feel that sometimes I handle that interaction, I guess that I handle that electronic part of it with a little disdain and with a little distrust, because again, I feel like I'm that bridge from the past to the future, and I feel that a lot of us are, and it may be that's some of the issue with social media right now, and people always say social media is mean and social media is this and that maybe it is an impact of our resentment towards it, a resentment we don't even know exists. Now, we started off talking about what life was really about and the real purpose in life, and then we end up on social media, and I know you have to think, well, he's rambling, he's crazy, but the question still exists. to me, to what purpose are we so different? To what purpose are we so unlike any other life form? I disrespect no one's belief whatsoever. Believe what you will, as long as those beliefs hurt no one else. As long as you don't use those beliefs to belittle or to down or to inflict pain or to persecute other people. Believe what you want to believe. I believe wholeheartedly that we are here, and there has to be a reason why we are so different. I don't believe that. Try to say this the easiest, most polite way. Regardless of your faith, let's say regardless of, now the three major religions, despite their inability to communicate with one another, worship the same God. They have different language, so he has different names, but in text he is the same entity, the same being. So that would be what almost everyone, when I say God, that's what I would be referring to. Some people would look at Buddha, look at other various entities, let's say. Whatever that entity may be, it's their greater power. And so the statement is often made that we're here because of a greater power, and that is the cause of our existence. That doesn't answer the question. Some people would say, well, you're just here to serve God, or you're just here to serve Christ, or you're just here to do whatever for Buddha. It's not logical. And I don't think that your God or your whoever you pray to would accept that as a reason for the astonishing feat that is life. There's too much more. I mean, life's too long. It's too involved. There's too many different situations, too many different things that you're just simply here to exist until you die, to go to a different area to exist with them. I think they have more respect for you than that, and I think that they would have a greater purpose and plan for you than that. So let's look at it maybe scientifically. Is there a reason why we have this vast difference? We have this biological relationship with our surroundings, yet the mechanics of us, the electronics of us, the mental aspect of us is so vastly different than everything else. There's no way that simply is so we can come here and build things of no value and work for something that honestly has no value, to work for money, something that isn't real, something that's a thought construct, something that has no substantial validity in life. And do all those things just so that we can spend that fake money on fake things until we die. It's not a logical process. It's not. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me. I could be an illogical person. It could be a negative reflection on me that I don't have the ability to understand and comprehend that situation. Don't know. But I would think, and it's purely me thinking, that it's more likely that we're overlooking the purpose. That we just aren't satisfied. And that inability to be satisfied could very well be what's allowed us to last this long. It could be what gives us the advantage over the other creatures of the earth. It could be what gives us the possibility to far exceed the lifespan of things like the dinosaur before us, and whoever knows what's before that. I don't believe this is the first cycle of man. I don't think this is the first cycle of intelligent life. We're too advanced too quickly. I would think that there's something there that helped that, because no other creature's able to evolve, move, and shift the way that we do. And some people say that there's definite proof of a higher power, and it does lend itself to that. I can understand that. But what if we just simply have not got to the point that we can understand, accept, and nurture our true potential and our true reason for being here. And what if our real future, our real existence, lies in marriage in some way, in connection in some way to this electronic life that many of us just don't understand and don't appreciate, and that dinosaurs like myself have such a problem coping with. Maybe that's the bridge. Maybe we come out of something like this coronavirus changed, and that's what is the catalyst for us living life as life was truly meant to be lived. Or possibly it's just a small stepping stone in life, and that eventually something on the electronic spectrum, possibly that is the difference. That's what makes us change. That's what provides the growth, the expansion, is something that we've yet to discover, something that we have to work and strive, and so many generations before have to live a completely unfulfilled life, a life of a lack of understanding, because we've not yet made it to that point. But when we do, when we get to that point, then we'll have the ability to live life as it was intended, and maybe the electronic side of it is a necessity for that. Of course, I don't believe that. I believe life's about experience and friendship and love and possibly ayahuasca, and most definitely that the working side of it and the job that you hate and all those things are a burden we just have not figured out a way to shake yet. But I have faith in humanity that we will find a way to break those shackles. I hope you don't feel like this is 40 minutes of wasted time. A lot of these podcasts are simply a thought process, simply just a game of what if, a process of kind of filling out different topics and discussing those topics. Send me comments, send me emails. It's authorjperk@gmail.com. It's on Jay Perkins on the YouTube page, which all these automatically link to the YouTube page. Look for Author J Perk on Twitter, I believe, and it's possibly Author J Perk on Instagram. Don't know. It doesn't exist on Facebook. But email's the easiest way. Send it to me. Let me know what you think. Have a good day. Don't suck. Oh, we got to do a quote. Okay. Mr. Robert Frost. In 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on.